So let's start. Good morning. Welcome to the press briefing of the UN Information Service here in Geneva. Today is Tuesday, 14th of October, and we are going to have quite a few information coming from the situation in Gaza. But before going to Gaza, I have the pleasure to welcome a colleague from UNICEF, Carla Haddad, that I have here on my right, who's UNICEF Director of the Private Fundraising and Partnership Division of UNICEF with Ricardo. Carla has come to tell us about the plight of the Rohingya children in Cox's Bazar, which I understand you have visited recently. Please, you have the floor. Thank you. Yeah, that's right.
Good morning, and thank you for your time. Right now, in the Rohingya refugee camp in Cox's Bazar, it's the largest camp there. A funding crisis is unfolding and is threatening to erase years of progress for the Rohingya children. I was there last week, and it was disheartening to watch classrooms close, services shrink, and the futures of hundreds of thousands of children that are hanging by a thread. So last week, we visited the different parts of the camp. UNICEF, with our partners, we're doing everything possible to really stretch every dollar, but we're running out of options. Education, water, sanitation, and hygiene assistance are among the hardest hit. Protection services for women and children in this very large refugee camp, the largest, are being interrupted just as risks are increasing. Recent data shows a staggering reality for children, with 685 cases of child recruitment by armed groups reported this year alone, more than 5 times the total recorded for all of 2024. And the year is not yet over. Indications are that the situation will be even more dire next year. The overall Rohingya response faces what we call right now in UNICEF a funding cliff in early 2026. So we're progressing towards this funding cliff at high speed, with worst-case projections suggesting that already insufficient contributions could fall by half. Even with efficiencies, integration of programs, localization of the support, and the saving of tens of millions of dollars, no amount of cost-cutting can offset such a deep decline. And across the camps, kindergarten and grade 1 learning facilities remain closed, so children are not schooled, denying education to the youngest of children. Youth vocational centers are shuttering, leaving adolescents vulnerable to recruitment, exploitation, and abuse, and rising insecurity overall. And these are not abstract numbers. They are warnings. A leaner, more efficient response, which we're trying to do, cannot replace the resources needed to sustain life-saving services. I just wanted to share that in the camps, I met 14-year-old Salma, one of 3 girls in a classroom of 18. So majority of boys, only 3 girls remain in this classroom. She told me how proud she was to finally study the Myanmar curriculum, something her parents once thought would never be possible. That progress came only through years of engagement and trust building within the community, but is now at high risk. So we're faced with impossible choices, not only UNICEF, all the partners operating there. We've prioritized reopening classes for adolescents like Salma, both for their education and for their protection. When adolescents have no safe place to go, they face heightened risks, and I heard it from several children, risks of child labor, of course, early marriage for girls, and exploitation. Last week, we were able to reopen classes for younger children, a moment of hope. Yet kindergarten and grade 1, as I said, remain closed, and whether we can sustain existing programs next year is still uncertain. So for children who have already lost their homes, friends, and sense of normalcy, this uncertainty when it comes to schooling is devastating. Very quickly, I wanted to share with you what I talked about with 15-year-old Mohammed. He met me to tell me what had happened when the school had closed. He thought it would never reopen. So he stayed home, took care of his aging parents and of his siblings. And each morning he watches children go to school and says, I feel like my childhood has ended. Across the camps, families feel the same despair. Mothers in different centers, UNICEF supported nutrition centers, speak of reduced food assistance, so critical issues around food and food security, shortages of soap and clean water. Childhood diseases are on the rise, and malnutrition too. SAM, or severe acute malnutrition among children, is now at its highest level since the height of the crisis in 2017. So this is not only about an education emergency, it's a child protection and survival crisis for children. It is a test, really, for our collective will. And we're repeating this everywhere across public and private sector. Without predictable, flexible funding, we will see more children out of school and malnourished, more girls forced into early marriage, and more young people losing hope in the future. So we'll stay in the camp, we'll stay and deliver, that's our mantra, but our ability to do cohesive and meaningful work depends entirely on voluntary funding. And I left Bangladesh more convinced than ever that even if the situation there is not on the media headlines, we really owe it to those children to bring their situation to your attention. I thank you.
Absolutely, this is absolutely right. So I thank you very much for this briefing, for telling us about your trip. I see Emma Reuters has a question. Emma, good morning.
Good morning. I was wondering if you could say more about the recruitment into armed groups, actually. Which groups are they? And did you speak to any children about maybe some comrades that they'd lost, why they're tempted, why it's better than the alternative that they're facing in the camp? Thank you.
I won't be able to name the armed groups. There are several armed groups in the region, but I spent time with a family, and they were happy for me to use information from what they've shared, and it was honestly heartbreaking. So there was the mother, the father, and the children. One of their sons was abducted and then returned, and the other two. So they had two sons abducted. And what they talk about is fear walking in the camp at different moments of the day. Because of the funding shortages, we're rationing everything we do in the camps. So it's not a direct correlation, but there is a sense of heightened insecurity. And it could be that the child is walking somewhere, either to school or to fetch for food or get some clean water from the water points, and they get abducted. It could happen during daytime or any time in the evening. And what they were saying is the stress, honestly, you could see the parent talking about the details of the stress of having someone missing. And we know what it does to a family. So not only they're coping with food shortages and other matters, but also having, at different moments, one of their boys abducted. What is interesting is the boy who came back became an activist in the camp, and they're really ramping up the support across the adolescents and youth to sensitize children on improved security awareness, be situation aware when you move around. But this is very disturbing for us. I mean, we're talking several years into this camp of sustained support, and seeing an increase in recruitment is extremely worrying for the future. So we've spoken to several families, and this is the #1 stress that they have right now. And of course, they come to early marriage and wedding their girls, and this is kind of an issue of no option. If the girl is out of school, the immediate consequence is early marriage for economic reasons, and also for protection, even for protection. So we're put in impossible choices, and we're putting these families in front of impossible choices.
Thank you very much. Are there other questions in the room? Or let me see on the platform. John Zarocostas, France 24, and The Lancet.
Good morning. I've got a question for Carla, but on another topic. So I'll wait if there are more questions on Cox's Bazar.
I don't see any, John. So, no, I don't see other questions on Cox's Bazar. So please go ahead before we let Carla go.
Yes. Good morning, Carla. Nice to see you again. I was wondering how you are doing in the fundraising for funds for Gaza, given that some of the areas that UNICEF is actively involved, education, nutrition and WASH, are very underfunded, below the average.
John, we will have a very consistent part of the briefing on Gaza, but this is a very specific question for us as UNICEF. I don't know if you want to answer before you go, but we will have much more on Gaza, including from UNICEF. Please go ahead.
Thank you. So, I mean, the funding crisis, the global funding cuts are coming from the public sector. And again, it's not just the US, it's the domino effect with the different European countries following suit because of the geopolitical situation and prioritizing other budget lines, so ODA shrinking massively. This is an important piece, and we know that for UNICEF, we're living a contraction of 20% across our programs across the organization. Now, what I can say is, as much as things are shrinking on the public sector side, there is a momentum for the private sector side. And even if we don't go to the private sector saying you have to compensate for the public sector, the private sector has a role to play per se in itself. And we've seen a revived momentum now for Gaza, for Ukraine, for other underfunded and also willfully neglected contexts. I think that we have a momentum now across the humanitarian development sector to really have a meaningful approach with the private sector to at least create that safety net until things stabilize more globally. And Gaza is no exception. And especially now, there will be a renewed attempt to support because they know that all the agencies are ready to deliver the aid. We were kind of handcuffed, and the private sector could not just support to support. So I think we need to really ramp up our appeals and bring the private sector at the table.
And that's really timely that you speak about that, Carla, because our next speaker is indeed going to speak about the reconstruction need for Gaza. I'd like to thank you very, very much for having come. Oh, this is a question for her. Not on Gaza, please. I want to do a Gaza part. So is that on Gaza? But I would like to hear from UNDP because he's going to speak a lot more about funding. Carla, do you need to go or can you stay? I can stay. Okay, but that's done. In this case, let's do this. We have online, you can stay on the podium, yeah, sure, and Ricardo too. We have the privilege to have online the special representative of the administration.